Welcome to Lunch with Tech Leaders, where we have engaging conversations about software development and cloud engineering with industry leaders and subject matter experts. These episodes are created by the Great Lakes Tech Leaders, an online community of technology practitioners. Please come join the conversation by visiting gltl.rbn.ai. Again, that's gltl.rbn.ai. Now strap in, because we're deploying to production in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Lunch with Tech Leaders. My name is Adam Oberhausen. I'm the Director of Cloud Architecture with Right Brain Networks, and I'm your host today. Joining me today is software and data consultant, Mr. Tom Kowalski. Say hi, Tom.
Hello.
And on today's show, Tom and I are the subject matter enthusiasts, we'll call it.
There we go.
So yeah, we're going to talk about AI in business. You know, a lot of buzz out there about AI, ChatGPT. You'd have to be living under a rock to not hear about this thing. But I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about today. I'm thinking this is going to be a multi-part episode, but we'll see how much we can rip through. Yeah, Tom, thanks as always for joining and coming on to talk about AI and how it impacts business in particular today. Very broad topic.
Yeah. I think this can definitely be a couple segments on it, especially starting off broad here. But yeah, this is very important. Or it's happening. I just watched an interview with Sam Altman, and it's things are happening.
Very zeitgeist.
Yeah. Zeitgeist, that's it.
That's the word.
I'm excited to jump in.
Yeah, I've been reading almost, I don't know, I just seem to gravitate towards a lot of articles on AI. I find a lot of good content on New York Times. They seem to be feeding my addiction with AI news. There's also the TLDR newsletter. I don't know if you've subscribed to that, but they have an AI version of that. And that's actually where I get a lot of the articles and stuff that I post in the community. Is just the TLDR newsletter. It's just kind of like a quick daily recap of important news. So yeah. So I think what I wanted to start out with, I feel like I'm a broken record sometimes when I say this, but okay, so now AI is everything, right? It means everything to everyone. It has all these different meanings. So I wanted to take a step back and say well, what are the key AI technologies and what are their roles in business today, right? Because it's not like AI is new, but it's it just seems like it's very much on the forefront of everyone's mind. So there's things that have been happening with AI for decades, right? So a rundown of what's out there, right? So I'll start with okay, you've got machine learning, right? I mean, it's been around for a while, and it's considered a subset of AI that uses algorithms that can learn and make predictions based on data. So you would see those in forecasting, recommendation systems for your favorite shopping, online shopping carts, right? And things like fraud detection. Next on my list there is deep learning, which I didn't really know much about till I researched for the show here, but it's a subset of machine learning. And deep learning, what makes it different than machine learning is that it uses an artificial neural network to enable more advanced data analysis and pattern recognition. So I've never worked with anything. I've never really worked with machine learning or deep learning, but I'm again, it's kind of fascinating to learn about these different slices of subsets of AI.
Yeah, I think the big one with the deep learning, I know it's for the image recognition, is the big application that I know of, right? And using that for images and the area, right? So detecting objects, right? Like autonomous vehicles and things like that using deep learning.
Next on my list of key AI technologies is natural language processing. You might see that as NLP. the branch of AI that focuses on interaction between computers and human languages. So this is kind of, I think, somewhere, in the realm of ChatGPT. You've got, language automation, content generation, but I don't know if they consider if ChatGPT is more of a deep learning or a natural language processing.
I think,
I don't really know.
like the natural language processing is more like, your Alexa, right? Or like your Hey
Mhm.
Google, which have been around for a while. But yeah, I think it's like, the game changers, like ChatGPT, and that's, what got us all talking about it, bringing it back up again in the forefront. Um, yeah.
Next on the key AI technologies is computer vision, which allows computers to interpret and understand visual information such as the world. So this, to me, seems like it's related to deep learning because image recognition is part of deep learning. I don't know if I've really heard of computer vision specifically called out as like this is built on computer vision technology versus deep learning, but something that came up. Computer vision is for applications like facial recognition, object detection, and like quality control in manufacturing. Other key AI technologies, I've heard the term RPA, robotic process automation, which to me sounds like things we've been doing in like DevOps type related fields for years and years. But it's basically it says it's using AI, quote, to automate repetitive tasks such as data entry, invoicing, and customer service. So, I think again that's a lot of broad stuff that could be it's adjacent to a lot of other technology that's already out there.
Yeah, I think this is, kind of like interchanging maybe the applications versus like the algorithm, right? Like how it's done, like deep learning, like could be in computer vision or in, this automation. But yeah, different terms for how it's categorized versus like the algorithms behind it.
Next on my list is reinforcement learning, a type of machine learning. Reinforcement learning focuses on training algorithms to make decisions by interacting with an environment and learning from the consequences of their actions. So that sounds interesting. I think I've seen some of that. Like, have you ever seen like where they create like a robot that doesn't know anything, but it just experiments with its environment, and it ultimately like learns how to walk or climb a wall or something just based on interacting with its environment. So that to me is
Yeah,
real fascinating.
seen it with video games, which fascinated me, right? They'd have it start just mashing buttons on a video game and just learning that, okay, the score going up is better, and how it's mashing the buttons, figuring out the right sequences to play the game to get the score to go higher. But yeah, starting from nothing.
I got two more key AI technologies. This next one I've never heard of. Generative adversarial networks, GANs, a type of deep learning model that can generate new data based on existing data.
Yeah,
So,
I think this is where it became popular with making humans, right? Making like, I don't know, to make a face of somebody that could actually look real. I think that's what kind of got popular there
okay.
a few years ago.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it says. It's used for applications like generating realistic images, improving product designs, or creating synthetic data for training purposes. So it's pretty cool. Lastly, and I think you touched on this, speech recognition, which has been around, with Siri, Lex, Google, Home. It's been on our phones, but basically it enables computers to convert spoken language into written text. So, yeah, I guess and then of course, like the granddaddy of it all is where, I see a lot of people saying, well, ChatGPT is not real AI, right? It's not, and the new term seems to be AGI, right? Artificial
Yeah,
General Intelligence. So that seems to be like, there's all these things now that are like under the AI umbrella, but none of them really have what you would call general intelligence comparable to a human.
yeah. And there's a lot of debate on like what ChatGPT is on the the large language model, right? And like how that can't be considered, the general intelligence, but it's yeah, a lot of scientists are arguing about it, but does it really matter is the question, right? If a human can't tell the difference.
Right. I mean, yeah. My experience, yeah, it's easy to trick ChatGPT and make it do funny things, but like when I use it for a purpose, like helping me with some Python code, I would say it passes the threshold for me of having general intelligence in terms of answering my questions for what I need it to give me. So
Yeah.
with that, I think let's transition. So that that's the kind of all those different techs we just talked about are kind of like what's already been out there, right? It's been in use for several years. Not sure where we go from here on the conversation, Tom, but we could talk about like
Well, it's how things have changed. Where a lot of people, it was kind of slowly people saw, their jobs evolving with technology, right? Like, okay, yeah, this came out, and I can start leveraging it for my job here, making it a little bit easier there. These different technologies, but I think with Chat GPT, it was kind of like a real jump, a real leap for everyone. That was like, wait a minute, right? Like this is a lot farther along than I expected, right? Than anybody expected and what I was doing, right? Especially in the development sense, right? Being able to just pump out, almost complete applications was kind of mind blowing. I didn't think anybody saw that on the horizon.
I want to reference an article that I thought was really interesting. Basically, it's actually a study by Goldman Sachs where they predicting that up to 300 million jobs will be degraded or lost by artificial intelligence. Right? Did you see this article?
No,
See this headline?
And how long? Did it say like how?
I think it's like by
Now?
2030.
Okay.
So, I think a lot of it's like the clickbait headlines, right?
Yeah.
So when you actually look at the report by Goldman Sachs, it's saying, basically saying like 2/3 of all jobs are exposed to some degree of AI automation. It's kind of the gist of what they're saying, which I would agree with. And then, historically, the good news when it comes to new technology is that even though there's some worker displacement, the automation is usually offset by creating new jobs that support that technology, right? So
Yeah.
I think if you really kind of dive into what they're saying, but I mean, 300 million jobs is a lot, and I think it's certainly going to disrupt and change the way that companies do business. Just trying to skim through the article, see if there's anything else I want to touch on, but
Yeah, I wonder
that's the gist of it.
they have like the list of what jobs, because I mean, I think it's 100% of jobs are gonna change in the next 7 years in some capacity. So yeah, I'm surprised. Where do they draw that line? Right, the 2/5.
I think they said the most potential for disruption is things like office administrative support, legal, architecture and engineering, business and financial operations, management, sales, healthcare, and art and design. So pretty much everything, right?
But yeah, where's like the other side of it, right? Where's the 3/5 that isn't being touched?
You have jobs like in-person repair, right? Like like if you have to go.
I feel like that's going to be disrupted too. Like AI being able to look at it, diagnose, right? Just hear the.
Have your nanobots just come into your house and fix your drywall?
Yeah, or I mean, not disrupted, but yeah, maybe just remote, being able to do it remotely. You have your phone and just like AI is just like, oh, go over here, look at that. I don't know. I can't think of something that it wouldn't be disrupted.
When they talk about the downside of this resurgence of AI is that historically that since 1980, 50 to 70% of changes in the U.S. wages since 1980 can be attributed to wage declines among the blue-collar workers replaced or degraded by automation. So basically it's saying, and then they kind of go on and say, artificial intelligence, robotics, and these new technologies have caused even further chasm in the wealth and income inequality. But I think this is the first time, at least in my life, where like the white collar jobs are just as exposed to what were traditional the blue collar jobs, right? Because with what the ChatGPT and generative AI is able to do in terms of generating content or interacting with customers, it just seems like there's a lot of more white collar jobs at risk.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd call it risk. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, not risk, but disruption, right? It's not like it's everyone's just going to be out of a job, right? But it's the way that the jobs are done. It's going to be disrupted.
Yeah. Just see if there's anything else. They say it's going to boost GDP. That's good. I think touches on in 2019, Wells Fargo said that robots would eliminate 200,000 jobs in the banking industry within the next 10 years. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting article. I think a lot of this is just hype, but I think there's some truth to it. Like, right, you want to get people to click on your articles on the internet. So a big headline like 300 million jobs are going to be lost. That got me to click, right? So good job.
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of jumped. I was going to save that for the end, but I think it felt good to talk about it there. Some of the things I want to continue talking about are, how about some of the real AI business-driven transformations that have already taken place?
In what sense? In what industries?
We got retail, for example.
I know big ones are fraud in like retail, right? Being able to detect fraudulent transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to forecast. Right, has been a big one of what you're going to need and when.
I know. Like Amazon is already using AI-powered robots in their warehouses to like automate their sorting and packaging. We've already touched on the machine learning and recommendation algorithms. So the companies like Amazon. So like I think there's a lot of these transformations have already happened, right? And maybe people aren't even aware that they've happened. In healthcare, they've already using machine learning driven medical imaging, right? To like be able to look at medical scans and detect diseases that a human eye would never be able to catch, right?
Yeah.
You touched on finance, right? The fraud detection is huge. I think being able to in real time, which I think is important, detect fraud. There's actually some interesting things happening in agriculture as well. They're using some of that computer vision technology to, analyze crops in farms in real time, know exactly how much water do they need, know exactly if there's some kind of, infestation happening in this quadrant of the farm, and like it's just all like AI driven and machine learning, and basically giving farmers real time information on exactly what they need to do with their crops, and that helps produce better yields and less waste and less water consumption.
Yeah, and even like you were saying, the repairing, right? Like that's hard to do, but that already is taking place because I was just reading there's a company that sends drones up for windmills, or that generating power. They send them up there to look, and the drone can look for the cracks and things like that without having to send like an engineer up there to have to monitor it, right? And then they can assess it So yeah, that's
Mhm.
already taking place right now.
In manufacturing, you see companies like General Electric implementing AI-based predictive maintenance systems for their industrial equipment. So, the machines are basically able to, and I feel like this is something that's been around a lot in the fields we've worked on, Tom, in DevOps, where, you kind of always monitoring, you want observability throughout your entire system. And I think the machine learning and AI provides some of that. And of course, you see what's happening with automotive and the autopilot driver assistance systems. I feel like that one is taking longer than I thought because it felt like it was going
Yeah,
to happen, but it seems like it's a real challenge. I've actually heard of some startups kind of scrapping the playbook and like coming up with totally new approaches to autonomous driving because what they have come up with so far is like not quite getting it to the goal line.
yeah, that is interesting. I've kind of heard of that too, right? Like some of the sensors that they thought would be really helpful, like all the radar, lidar, and all of that, is kind of being scrapped just for cameras, just using like the computer vision,
Mm-hmm.
just to detect depth and all of that. Um, well, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I've got on business transformations. Did we touch on supply chain optimization? Like that kind of all falls in with some of the things we were talking about, but just being able to demand forecast, inventory management, logistics planning, all, mountains of data. So these are ways that businesses, I can't imagine how they were even doing it before these algorithms existed or this machine learning capability existed. Like, I don't even know. Because even when you think about Amazon, like when they started to scale, like they certainly didn't have the level, anywhere near the level of sophistication they have now.
Yeah, I also think it's being more distributed, right? It's easier for everyone to leverage these. Where yeah, maybe like Amazon had it and was on the brink of it, back 10, 20 years ago, whatever. But yeah, now it's much easier for everyone to have access to it. I think that's kind of changing too. It's not just the big companies, the Googles, the Amazons, Microsofts, the yeah.
All right, so what about some of the challenges and limitations of using AI?
I think one of the big ones is the regulation. Um, I know, in compliance with the laws that we already have, especially in determining credit, right? Credit scores. Using AI for that, especially with the deep learning, they don't have. It's kind of like what they say is a black box, and they don't really know how it's being calculated, and it can't be audited. So if you get denied, credit application, those companies have to show like why, and they can't just say, "Well, our AI told us to," right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, algorithmic transparency and
yeah,
explainability.
yeah,
Yeah, that's real interesting to me. Like these algorithms are often described as a black box. There's, of course, there's some general knowledge of the geniuses who crafted these algorithms, but they do things. They make their decision making process can be very difficult to interpret. So that leads to ethical concerns and accountability. And I think you just gave a great example with the credit score. Yeah, if some algorithm tells you you're not qualified based on your credit score, it's like, well, why is that my credit score? And the
yeah.
customer
There's
service team
compliance, right?
says,
They have
yeah.
to, and laws that they have to abide by.
The other one you hear about with the you know ethical considerations with AI is bias and discrimination, right? With what they're trained on. And to me, I've been thinking a lot about this one lately. I'm not sure why, but I'm kind of fascinated by it because as humans, we are biased. We, whether we admit it or not, and the content we generate, anything there's always subconscious bias in everything we do. And so, of course, if we're training a chat GPT on the content that's generated by humans, it just seems like almost unavoidable that there's going to be some bias in its results.
Yeah.
And that's something like I haven't really played around with ChatGPT to like try to get it to, say bias things. I use it strictly purely for what it's intended to be used for. I haven't really tried to trick it and see what kind of biases I can make it have, but
And that's the one thing too, not just the bias, but the ethics. Whose ethics, right? Everyone's different countries, cultures. They're all different. In that interview that I was listening to with Sam Altman, he kind of sees the future as it's going to be different AI and different preferences, right, for the different cultures and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. But yeah, that was interesting to me. He hopes that we can converge. His like dream is that everyone gets together and kind of says what's right and what's wrong. But yeah, it's a big challenge.
yeah. I think humanity's really going to come together.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think that the most common one you hear about is, I think with the computer vision learning, often mistakes people of color, with just not recognizing people. I've read a lot of recent stories about, I think there's a company called Clearwater that scraped 30 billion faces off of Facebook, and then so that's in their database, and then police use it to identify suspects, right? And so I read this recent article about a guy was pulled over in Georgia, and they ran his face through. He was a person of color. They ran his face through this system, and it said he was wanted for grand larceny in Louisiana, and he's never been to Louisiana. He was arrested on the spot, extradited to Louisiana, put in jail for a week, missed work, and he had to prove that he wasn't, this person. And it just goes to show, thankfully he had family and financial resources to defend himself. But think of you're just, typical, just an American person that's, living paycheck to paycheck, and you don't have the financial resources to defend yourself legally. I mean, this is very scary technology that they can just pick you up and send you out of the state which you live in and charge you with a crime. He's never physically been to Louisiana, and he was arrested for this.
So you said scary technology, right? I don't think it's the technology that's the issue, right? It's the scary part is right. It's a tool to leverage, and it can help. But if you don't have the right processes in place, you shouldn't just go off of that tool and saying that, right? It should be checked. It should help. But yeah, I've heard this too with reading license plates, and if it gets it wrong, it still should be there to help and not necessarily be used to as evidence. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea of framing it as a tool. I was actually talking to I had a doctor visit recently, and we were talking about some things, and he was like, "Yeah, it's a tool. I don't think ChatGPT is going to replace my role in society as a doctor, but I'm happy to use it as a tool, just like we've always used things as a tool." And he said, if you look at the tools are always dangerous, right? I mean, look at man didn't create fire, but we harness the power of fire, right? And look what it can do. Look at the combustion engine. What a marvel of technology that is. But in hindsight, I mean, it's causing climate change that could cause irreparable damage to our Earth, right? So there's always this balance, and there's always this risk of the good that can be used from the tool versus the bad things that can be done with the tools.
Yeah, I think that was really stressed by Sam Altman in that interview, where he kept saying it's a tool. It's just a tool to use, right? I mean, people get in the whole calling it, right? And it's what's the gender? And yeah, It's interesting, but yeah, you keep stressing this is just a tool.
I always say please and thank you to ChatGPT.
I say please and thank you too.
I want to be on the good side of
Yeah.
the AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as I predicted, I've got about like 5 more pages of notes I wanted to go through, but we are at time, and I think we touched on some really interesting stuff. Definitely want to keep revisiting this, see where we're at with more AI talks, but yeah, I think that's it for me. Anything else you want to discuss or questions, Tom, before we wrap it up here?
No, yeah, I'm excited to dive into some of these a little deeper, right? Maybe some of these topics that we discussed. Yeah, diving into a little deeper.
What do you anything like that we touched on that you think, oh, like we could spend a whole show on that? I don't want to
I
put you on the
mean,
spot.
the regulation one, I think we could definitely talk about, right? And safety.
Yeah, because there was
We could do
that
some-
open letter from like 1,000,
Yeah.
technology enthusiasts who said we need to pump the brakes on AI. So yeah, we
Yeah.
should dive deeper into that and the regulation because I think I like that. To me is fascinating, and I think it's something we could have a lot of fun with talking about the
Yeah.
regulation and
The safety, right? The whole like self-driving cars, the safety with that. Whose fault is it? If, Chat GTP tells you to go do something bad, right? Things like that. Your data, right? The privacy of your data. Yeah, there's a lot that can be talked about on all that.
Yes, there is. Okay, well, want to thank everyone for listening to our episode today of Lunch with Tech Leaders. Hope you found the conversation informative and valuable. We'd love to have you join us again next week for our next episode where we're going to be discussing the role of technology in addressing climate change. And Ray Welker is going to host that one. And I think we have some subject matter experts lined up to help us navigate that conversation. But looking forward to it. And be sure to tune in. Thank you and have a great one.
Thank you.